Thanks for joining us. I am Precious Amayu. I will start here in Africa, where Mali's classrooms have gone quiet as the country's military government shuts down all schools and universities for 2 weeks. The Education Minister, Amadou Savane, says the suspension, which runs until November 9th, is because of the worsening fuel shortages that are making it hard for teachers and students to move around. He insists the authorities are doing everything possible to get fuel supplies back to normal before schools reopen on November 10th. But for now, fuel remains scarce across the country. The government says supplies will be restricted, with priority given only to emergency services, public transport, and essential vehicles. The crisis started nearly 2 months ago when the Al-Qaeda-linked armed group known as JNIM declared a blockade on imported fuel from neighboring countries. Since then, the group has attacked tankers coming mainly from Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire, cutting off a key lifeline for Mali's economy. The impact has been severe. Prices have gone up, transport has slowed down, and in the capital, Bamako, long queues now stretch for hours at filling stations. Analysts say this blockade is one of the toughest tests yet for Mali's military rulers, who came to power in 2020, promising to restore stability, but are now battling mounting pressure on both the security and economic fronts. Dr. Patrick Coker, former spokesperson UN missions in Sierra Leone, joins me now from the UK for more on the situation in Mali. Good to have you join us, Dr. Coker.
Thank you very much.
So the military government in Mali came to power just with the promise of stability, as we mentioned earlier in the introduction, and we saw that people were rejoicing, when they took power, thinking that it marked something different for them. Concerning this fuel blockade, the government had earlier this month assured residents that it was only a temporary issue, but now the crisis has persisted. I'm just wondering what you think this means for the legitimacy and authority of Mali's military.
Thank you. The terrorism in the Sahel has, subsisted for well over a decade now, or thereabout. And the new development is really terrible for the government in power, especially when you have to freeze, the day-to-day living or activities of citizens just because of the actions of terrorists. Indeed, it weakens, I must say, the legitimacy of the government. Even though, on another scale, it protects the citizens from the pains that this blockade is causing.
And is there a possibility that this could lead to dissent in Mali?
I must tell you that this is one of the reasons that the terrorists are creating this kind of blockade. One, to diminish the control and legitimacy of government. And this is one of their objective. Aside from the fact that they inflict pains on civilians, and I must say elsewhere, they've been described as criminals. You will never find them where there are no mineral resources. The recent activities by this group is that they're getting bolder and gaining some level of relevance. Everywhere you have these terrorists, you have mineral resources, and you also have criminalities. They engage in trade, they carry out human trafficking, drugs, the arms trafficking. So basically, it's all about making money.
And it would seem like the goal, like you have mentioned, of the insurgents or terrorists is to not just force dissent against Mali and destabilize its government. It would seem they also want to extend that to the Sahel countries or the Sahel states, that's Burkina Faso and Niger. inclusive. Do you see that becoming a thing, because these three countries have formed their own alliance? They also have economies that are interdependent at this moment. How terrible would that be for them if these were to happen?
I must say that with my analysis of the whole of the Sahel from Dakar, Senegal in 2022, all the terrorists in the Sahel are linked, and all of them, one way or the other, lay allegiance to either the Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State. And every other Amoebic group that emerges from the ones in West Africa all hold allegiance to these two global terrorist groups. Now, they are intertwined. They support each other. They have the same objective, criminality, and indeed make life difficult for governments and the military. They attack bases. They tend to tell civilians, we're going to give you security, we're going to support you by fear. And when you don't, dance to their request, they kill, they maim, and they destroy. As we speak, the corridors for logistics into Mali from Senegal, Mauritania, and Ivory Coast have all been degraded, and fuel tankers are being burned. They just light them up, and now when you do this, you create difficulty for civilians. As I speak, this is the modus operandi by the terrorists all over the Sahel, and indeed Nigeria. They go for military bases. They make life difficult for civilians. If you don't follow them, then you are their enemies. And they are not really going after states to control. They are not after those. They are not organized. You don't have a hierarchy to even work with. Basically, they are criminals.
And we know that the UN peacekeeping mission and French forces left Mali after the junta took over. To an extent, people believed that they had fared better. But under the military government, we've seen hired Russian mercenaries trying to tackle the insecurity. Some of the attacks in Mali now, this year, have been the deadliest in more than 3 years, according to one of a US agency assessment. I'm wondering if you think that this fuel blockade could disrupt the overall security situation even further.
Well, for them to have succeeded in blockading, that means they are succeeding to the extent that the forces on the ground have not been able to fully engage them and open those lines of communication. And I must say, all these issues happening in the Sahel are affecting the states that don't really have terrorism predominantly. For example, Senegal's economy is being affected because export and import occurs through that corridor. And it also, you also agree with me that all the border towns in West Africa are being affected because genuine trade is being affected. And basically, West Africa is under siege, not minding the fact that ECOWAS has, we now have the alliance of, Sahel states, not minding that, and the dichotomy, the whole of ECOWAS is being affected by the impact of this terrorists. And I believe that even in Nigeria, if we're going to deal with the Boko Haram crisis and terrorism bandit, we need to go to the source of this challenge. Basically, the Sahel is where they have their domain. And if the Sahel still harbors them, other countries must just be on the edge, and it will just be scratching the surface when you want to deal with it domestically.
Well, we'll continue to see how things are playing out in Mali. Hopefully, stability is restored. Thank you so much for your time, as always. Former spokesperson of the UN mission in Sierra Leone, Dr. Patrick Coker.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we return, we'll turn attention to Asia. Stay with us, everyone.